Preface. It's easy to communicate when people are kind and nice and sweet, when you're complimentary and encouraging and supportive. But what do you do when you don't feel like your spouse has your best interest at heart? What do you do when they do something or say something that hurts your feelings? How do you approach them? How do you approach them when you're miffed or bugged or upset or frustrated? Not only that, how do you respond to your spouse when they're in a bad mood, when they're irritated, upset, bothered with you? How do we approach and deal with conflict? And without tools on how to handle conflict like this, then the conflict will be destructive rather than constructive and will end up becoming more and more distant rather than brought closer together. So the whole purpose of this book is to walk you through principles and strategies to turn that inevitable conflict that you have in relationships and turn it into closeness. Why are divorce rates so high? You know, it's interesting. You could actually ask that question and flip it. Why aren't they higher? When you think about the most important institution on this planet, the marriage institution, you would think that the church pulpits would be filled with people trying to preach the principles of a healthy relationship. You would think that in the school systems that there would be this emphasis on resolving conflict and communicating with strength and power and assertiveness. You would think that there would be more programs available to teach people healthy communication skills. And unfortunately, okay, no offense to Mr. Pabian, my geography teacher in junior high school, unfortunately, we spend way more time learning things that we probably will never use ever again in our lives at the expense of learning things that we would probably use every day. And so I've got a bone to pick with the system. I wish that there would be some champion out there who would lobby for marriage training licenses like we do for driver's licenses. It's interesting, in the baby boomer generation, there was this great deal of pressure to pretend that everything was perfect. The whole idea was just smile and pretend. I know my grandparents were very much like that. It was a higher priority to have things look good than actually feel good and be good. But the children of the baby boomer generation, they want more. That's my generation. And then the next generation, the millennial generation, they want a fantastic relationship. They want the kind of relationship that Disney promised them, the happily ever after marriages. But the leaders, unfortunately, are not keeping pace with this deep desire to improve relationships and to make them awesome. On a few occasions, I've been able to meet with some millionaire clubs, the couples forums, and what they're doing is they're recognizing that no matter what kind of success that they have in life, no matter how much money they make, that happiness has more to do with the quality of their marriage than any other component in their life. And they are wise enough to recognize that they can invest in their happiness by investing in their marriages. Why this book? Well, you may wonder why another book should be written on communication in marriages. And the answer to that question is I have devoted my life to reading books on communication and marriages, and I invite you to consider the books that you've read on marriages and communication. And if your experience is anything like my experience is, those books are filled with fantastic ideas and principles, and you walk away with this warm feeling inside that, yes, Dr. John Gray has cracked the code on why men and women are different, and we learned the 5 love languages, and we learned so many things, and we walk away from that book, and by the time the last page is turned, we've forgotten how to even use the principles in the book. And so 99% of the stuff is ideas and concepts and great logic and warm, fuzzy feelings, but what I found is that I become disappointed in the lack of tools and strategies that a person can implement right away after reading the book so that they can begin to improve their marriages. And so, although there may be wonderful activities and ideas, it seems that they lack the substance to create that change, long-lasting change in the relationship. So this book is devoted to taking those principles and strategies and creating a recipe, a step-by-step recipe that not only changes the outcome of the relationship, it changes the individual, thus changing the relationship. It's taking that inevitable conflict in marriage and using that conflict to create closeness. This program has evolved over the years as I've refined it and tweaked it and changed it based on the feedback that I've received from clients and friends. And so I really welcome any kind of feedback and criticisms of this program if you're willing to share those with me. And just email them to me at emilharker@gmail.com. I also welcome you to go to emilharker.com. It's a website devoted to helping people with the tools and the resources to improve their marriages and make them amazing. And there's a special section on my website where you can go through each chapter of the book, sharing your thoughts and feedback and stories so that other people can get inspired to take those principles and the lessons that you've learned and apply them into their lives as well to make their marriages better. This program is really simple, and the ideas may be kind of a shock to your system, but they'll probably resonate with your inner fiber. And so, although these ideas are simple, I'm not implying that they're actually easy, because it's only easy when you become good at things like violin or piano. It's easy when you get skilled at it. So the principles and the program is very simple so that you can remember it, and then it'll become easier and easier as you practice these things. Because there's a lot of people that go, well, I want a better relationship just by reading the book. Well, if you want a better relationship by just reading the book, my suggestion would be to get out a pencil and a piece of paper and write a note to Santa Claus and see if the magical elves will bring this letter to Santa so that you can have a better relationship. But for everybody else, in order to have a great relationship, we got to do the work. We have to put forth the effort in applying these principles on a consistent basis, in a consistent manner, to be able to get the outcome that we want to have a better relationship. Introduction. I have been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Being willing is not enough. We must do. Leonardo da Vinci. There's a difference between knowing how to do something and being really good at something. So I've got a story about my friend Chandler Higgins, who's a professional wakeboarder, to illustrate the difference between knowing how and being good at a skill. So I'm sitting on this couch of this huge houseboat that's docked at the Antelope Point Marina in Lake Powell. It's a beautiful reservoir that spans southern Utah and Arizona. And so I'm basking in this scene, and I'm chatting with this professional wakeboarder, Chandler Higgins, and he's describing this really awesome wakeboard trick that I saw him do earlier in the day. And he's using all these numbers, and I'm going to do this 360, and I'm going to land with 180 or not. Anyway, he was using this language I didn't understand he was talking about. So I stopped him, and I go, Chandler, I can't even follow what you're doing when you describe this really cool trick. And he says, well, I thought you were a wakeboarder, bro. And I'm like, I know how to wakeboard, and I thought I was pretty good, but watching you and listening to you, I mean, you're amazing. Earlier in the day, as I watched Chandler wakeboard, I realized that he truly was an expert wakeboarder. The years of practice had transformed what he could do into something absolutely spectacular. The tricks he did were just amazing. The amount of air he got was amazing, and landing it was amazing. And he did this one trick. He called it the whirly bird. It's a 360-degree rotation, so it's a full twist, but it's gainer style off the wake while being pulled behind a boat. And so in order to make this point about what somebody does that's okay and a real skill at something, I asked him to describe this trick so that my readers and listeners could actually experience what this might be like. So if you can imagine listening to his voice in a kind of a southern surfer's dude style accent, then you're going to totally be able to channel into this conversation. So I'm just going to read what he wrote. At the moment the wake is still peaking, the boat still sounding vibrant and alive, I continue up the wake. At the very last second my board is leaving the peaking wake, I heave my chest upwards, bring my shoulders back, take a deep breath, and drop my right hand from the handle and begin to square my body to the wake as well as to the boat. I know the moment I'm airborne that I'm on the perfect path to pulling the whirlybird. In the air, I'm upside down, floating backwards now. I crank my neck to the right to force my head to look over my right shoulder. I need to rotate. To successfully land this trick, I need to add the 360-degree twist. I remind myself I must keep my composure or my body will be painfully and completely reminded of the technical riding ability required to perform this trick. I pull with my left arm while my body follows through as I keep my eyes looking over my right shoulder. My left arm continues pulling on the handle, whipping me around with the speed of the boat. In just a wink, my body comes around facing the same direction it was when I first started the trick, on the opposite side of the wake. I grab the handle once again with my right hand and brace myself for the landing. The trick is done, but I haven't landed yet. I'm still in the air, beyond the wake, in the flat smoothness of the deep, cool blue water. As my legs brace, my mind sets on the same continuing cut through the landing as I had when I took off. I look to where I'm going, not to where I'm landing. I push my chest out, bring my shoulders back, allow the tense muscles to relax in my neck and back, drop the landing gear, and touch the water again with the back end of the board. The water sprays as bent knees absorb the shock of the landing, and the board bites hard into the water. Nailed it! I look back at the wake, admiring the magnificent scenery that surrounds me and respecting the fact that not only did I survive, but I also conquered the unseen force in life and in the lake that always reaches up to pull you down, defeat you, destroy you, and take from you that which you hold closest and dearest to your heart. Chandler's poetic description of this successful execution contrasts really sharp from my experience in Lake Powell. I was trying a complicated, okay, it's not that complicated, but I'd like you to think that I was trying this really complicated trick. All I was trying to do is catch some major air. And so I was remembering what Chandler was teaching me. And so I'm like far enough away from the boat. I got quite a distance from the wake. And to get some speed, you just dig your heels in. I was just digging my heels in, and I'm digging my heels in, and I catch this major air. And I am like feeling sweet. I'm way high, higher than I've ever been. And I'm thinking, this is gonna be sweet. I'm gonna land this thing. I'm going pro. And I land it, but I didn't land it very good. And I start to over-rotate going over the top of the board because I wasn't very well balanced. And as I'm starting to pull over the top of the board, my left knee buckles in and snaps my ACL. So it started out as a really fun Lake Powell trip, ended up with 2 days of complete pain. I couldn't even walk. and then surgery the next week on my ACL, which, of course, if anyone who's ever had knee surgery knows that that is not fun at all. And this was a painful reminder of the principle of being able to do something and do it well. Committing to communicate effectively. The quality of our relationships in life is not due to some predetermined sequence in our DNA that programs us to communicate and respond in certain ways. Being a great communicator is much like being great at anything in life. I've already talked about Chandler Higgins being great at wakeboarding. Now, becoming a great wakeboarder requires the discipline and focus and practice and training to become great at it. And it's the same way with anything in life. If you want to be a great physicist, you got to study, you got to practice, you got to put your mind and your heart into it. If you want to be a great violinist, if you want to play the piano or dance, anything that you want to be great in life requires discipline and adherence to the principles that govern the success in that skill. Same thing happens in communication. For the past several years, I have been on a mission. I have been on a quest to find what it takes to help couples experience the love and the happiness that they believe would happen when they got married. You know how it is. You're dating and you're so in love that you just don't want to be away from each other. And you think that by uniting in this beautiful institution of marriage, that you can just use that marriage as a platform to experience the total love and happiness that we believe comes from marriage. Unfortunately, since we're not trained on how to communicate when we have things show up like frustrations and disappointments, what we hoped would be a happily ever after ends up with how in the heck did we get in this situation? And so being in love and being a good person is not adequate to creating a fantastic marriage. In fact, I hear all the time that being a good person should be adequate for creating a fantastic marriage. Which actually, when you think about it, makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, how does being a good person have any impact on being skilled at wakeboarding or playing the piano or violin or anything? I mean, you don't have to be a good person to be awesome at soccer or football. You don't have to be a good person at any of those things. Being a good person is not enough to create a fantastic marriage. It's nice, but in order to have a fantastic marriage, you have to have the skills to resolve difficulties, frustrations, and complaints in a way that creates closeness. That's what makes the difference between an amazing marriage and a mediocre marriage. I don't want to burst your bubble right now because I'm getting you all pumped up about this importance of communication and resolving conflict. So I have to put a little warning out there that no matter how much effort you put into becoming an awesome communicator, your partner still has the ability to choose what he or she wants. Unfortunately, there are going to be some people out there who will choose fear of change over the closeness that comes from better communication. And no matter how frustrating that is, no matter how painful that is for you, that's a right that they have, and we can't take that away from them. So all we can do is eliminate as much as possible any barrier that we put into the marriage. And if we can eliminate that, then hopefully it'll be easier for the other person to overcome the barriers that they've put into the relationship so that you can have a closer relationship. It's just hard to accept sometimes that you don't have that choice. And some people will choose fear of change over closeness. Now, what we can do, though, by understanding the psychodynamics of the relationship, the interaction, which is something that I've devoted my life to, we can actually maximize our influence for change. And I'll say that 1,000,000 times. Maximize your influence for change. How do we tap in to who we are, what we know, and how to communicate in such a way that we increase the likelihood of creating the changes that we want in our relationship.